Let's record. I think I'm recording. Yep, I'm recording. There is a chat window. It's a bunch of technical info about HTML. Yes. Let me share the screen. Yeah, terrible. And so we started this lecture with a surprise quiz. Yes. Yeah, I'm serious. A surprise quiz. So it's not, does not go in your grade, in your class grade, because I didn't say it would. You know, it counts for checking attendance, and is essentially material based on the slides that I, but based on the video I made for you for the class I missed. Yeah, so let me see if I can, okay? So that's the link and that's the form, okay? So there are 10 questions. Again, I don't use the grade as part of the class grade, but it is a how to call it, a self-evaluation, self-awareness test, right? This is based on the video I posted and I asked you to watch. So this will give you a measure of whether you know the material or not that you should have known for the beginning of this class, sort of, right? So just to, and so, you know, if you don't get the questions, it means you need to watch the video again, evidently. So let me give you a bit of time. I think when you submit the form, it tells you what the right answer was. I didn't watch the videos. I mean, I did watch Hello. Yeah.
So I'm just trying to study these questions here. Did they count up twice in the class or no? I see.
Yeah, it's self-assessment. It's for you to know what you know and what you don't know.
I see. So 64 is for participation then?
Well, I mean, it's like I check attendance.
I see. I see. You're saying anticipation is first.
Okay, 1 minute and a half.
Yeah. Same.
Okay, some 30 seconds. I don't know. My watch does not have seconds.
It should though.
Have seconds?
It should.
Yeah.
Is it an Apple Watch?
It's a cell phone, right? I don't have a watch. Okay, Bing. Okay, let me just so submit the form now in the next minute. Okay, so I'm not too nasty, but submit now. Okay. So this is just for self motivation, I guess. So if you haven't done very well, it means that you really need to watch the class video. I know it's boring watching me for 1 hour, believe me. But I don't know how to do otherwise, right? I think it actually came out pretty well for the material I wanted to cover. I don't know if anyone of you has watched it. So I think it worked fairly well. I know I'm not, sort of the best comedian out there, but what can I do? Okay, let me now close it and move on to other material. Yes.
I didn't even know there was a video. Where do we get
Yes, so you didn't know, and that tells me that you don't watch Piazza announcements. And so perhaps you need to change your preferences for messaging on Piazza, because I posted a notice on Piazza, and I think I had it to send email to everybody, or I made it an announcement at least, and that there was this lecture for available on video. And so, if you don't know about it, that's a sort of sign that maybe you need to change some messaging preferences. Okay, so that's also useful, by the way, that you know that, right? Yeah. No, I mean, I'm like you. I sometimes miss something, right? But I hope that this is a way for you to be, a sort of self motivation, so that you don't get lulled into complacency by not keeping up. So I want to say a couple of words about the project, the optional project, right? I haven't seen proposals yet. I don't know if everybody has decided that they don't want to do the project. up to you. Let me know if you want to do it. I wanted to cite two projects in particular that that are of interest to me personally. If you want to work on them, is your choice. But one of these is the following. I like to go hiking or biking or whatever, and I'd like to have a site where I can share GPX tracks very easily and overlaid on top of OpenStreetMap topo maps, which are the best maps for topography, if you follow a bit of the map scene. And so there are ways in which OpenStreetMap is able to be given the URL of a GPX file, which is what is generated by a GPX unit, and overlay it on top, right? And ideally, I would like something that works like this. I log in, and I can just upload tracks. And, I upload, I don't know, walk number 1, Montebello bike tour, whatever else, right? And then I can take what I have uploaded and I get a shareable link so that I can WhatsApp or iMessage or whatever I may choose to do to my friend to, hey, that's where I went. It was marvelous. Shall we go next week? That's the use case, because all the other apps I see for sharing GPX files are immensely complicated, right? And they want you to, I don't know, you become a member of Strava, and then you're supposed to actually try to exercise and whatever else. I don't care about that. I just want a shareable link to topo maps of places I've been, so that I can use it in blogs, I can use it in emails, and I can use it in other messaging, okay? So not too easy to do, not to have to do. It's a mix. You need to implement some of the OpenStreetMap API to load the map files. I can give good advice on how to do that, and I think it's a decent project. Another project is that I did some work long time ago. I mean, long time ago is 1 year ago, on fake news detection. And so there is a system at CSE that I still need to keep up, that essentially sucks in a lot of Twitter feed and tens of thousands of news a day, and then runs complicated algorithms server side. And there is a startup in Santa Cruz that has developed actually a nice UI and some other data set that they would like to integrate with me. And so we wanted to essentially do this collaboration in which we build these web APIs that talk to each other. They have the crowdsourced data, or they want to try to get the crowdsourced data about which news are fake, non-fake, reliable, non-reliable. We have a heap of Twitter-derived data, but also news articles downloaded from the web. And is there a team that wants to set up, to build the connection between the crowdsourcing and our data repository and whatever the data they might have? Okay, so that's another project. So these are two projects: one that is close to my personal interest, and one that is close to, some research I was doing at UCSC. Now I close these. I mean, I don't have any other great suggestions because I wanted the projects more to come from you, but if you want to discuss with me projects, you can always shoot me an email or come to talk to me, essentially. Okay. Any questions on anything at this point? Yes.
Not a question, but people on Zoom are saying they're having trouble hearing you when you walk around.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, because I must try to buy a microphone that enables me to move around. The broadcast to my laptop is a bit of a complicated thing. Yes. Any other question? Any other issue? Okay. So let's go on with the material. So the quiz was not fake, right? So I don't think it went incredibly well. And I can sort of look at the point distribution, but I think it may not be as high as I was hoping. I mean, it's not either as bad, because some questions may be hard. But it's not fake. I mean, those things in the end you need to know them. So maybe look at what you got wrong and maybe you rewatch pieces of the lecture. This is something I want to do more often because there are two parts of teaching really, in my opinion. One is teaching as in measuring. I want to measure you and see how good you are, to assign you a grade. That's the part that excites me the least. But the other one is teaching as in helping you learn. And I think that these tests that are not used for the class grade may be useful for the latter. They give you a measure and they maybe give you some incentive to say, maybe I didn't know things as well as I thought I would. I did. No, and that's a phenomenon that I have as well for myself. I'm also lulled to complacency. So I'm trying to sort of tell you, no, you need to know this stuff. Now, if you have watched the video, and pardon me if I assume that you did, we left off at this point. Yeah, sorry for missing the class with a little notice. You know, I couldn't do any better. So we had. Sorry, I'm a little bit, because you will see why I'm confused, because I have two places where to look. I will explain it in a moment. So this is the default controller, and there is an add one method that we developed that relies on a form that I hard coded. Okay, so I coded a form that submits to the page itself. Okay, it's a multi-part form, and it contains an input for title and an input for content. Okay, and the form, if I look at it locally, looks like this. Okay, so add one. Okay, it asks me to log in. Sorry, let me just log in quickly. Okay, so that's how the form looks like. Okay, so there are these title and content fields. Okay, and when I press add, the form is submitted to hash, which just means, you know, hash is a separator between the URL and the sort of local anchor in the page. But in this case, it's a shorthand for just saying, you know, submit to the same page where you loaded the post form. Okay, and so once the form is submitted, let's follow a moment very briefly what goes on. It goes to add one. I check, and if the request is a post request, I log some stuff, but then I say db post insert a record that has the title and content as specified in the form. Okay, so everything seems great and kosher, right? But what is wrong with this? What is dangerous with this? You probably cannot know. So let me tell you what is wrong. Okay, the problem is really here in this add1.html. So the problem, it goes back to how the web was born, actually, and it's a fairly stupid problem. I mean, it's a fairly hair-raising problem, if you will. The problem is this: I needed this form, okay, and that's great. But then when you fill in the form and you send it back to me, there is no very good way to check that the form has been filled by you as a human being. Okay. In fact, let me explain better what the danger actually is in having a form like this. This form is depicted on a page like this one. Okay, and if I submit it, I get the form content. Now, assume that one of the nasties among you, I don't know who wants to play the nasty one, I don't know, but you, okay, great. You raised your hand. Yeah, you're good enough. No, it's fine. But so he's the nasty guy. I mean, he's not, of course, but we pretend he's the nasty guy. And he creates another page that asks me another question on another website, an independent website, not this website, right? His website. His website is about a survey of bananas. And he's asking, do you like bananas, yes or no? And the problem is that he can define the post URL for his form about bananas to be my URL at one, okay? And if he does that, his bananas site form will be submitted to my add one URL. You think, but that's inconceivable. That's completely silly. It cannot happen. Because of course, you know, in his banana site, he's not logged in. Yes, you are right. But unfortunately, that's not how the web works. If your browser is logged into my site, even if you visit his banana site, when you submit information to my site, the browser thinks, oh, I want to be helpful. Lucas' site, oh, I have a cookie for Lucas' site. Let me include the cookies for Lucas' site. No? And so the form from the banana site arrives at my site together with a cookie that shows that the guy is logged in. And so I accept the form and perform the action. Okay? So this was the basis of an old attack on Gmail, by the way, in which to change your forwarding list, you had to post a form. the form was not well protected. This is in the eons ago, right, at the beginning of Gmail. And so people could craft a form in which you are entering some other information, but the form was instead submitted to Gmail and would add somebody's email to your forward list. Yeah.
Cross-site request forgeries, right?
Yeah, yeah. Cross-site request forgeries of a simple type. But I want to show you how it actually works. So I implemented it for you so that this does not stay as a theory, but you have actually a working example, which actually costed me a little bit of time to do it, just because to make it really work, you need to deploy these sites on a web server. So I deployed these two sites actually in the cloud. And here they are. So I have two sites. This is my normal one. Look at the URL though, okay? I'm sorry it's small, but this is look@teaching, but please don't play with these sites while I give the presentation. Otherwise, you sort of discombobulate my setup, okay? So leave them alone just as long as the class goes, then you can play with them if you like. But so this site is called luca-teaching.appspot.com instead of being localhost. And then I still access, I'm sorry, I still access start default index, okay? And so this is my blog post, my blog in which I have these two posts. And I have, the possibility of doing add post if I want, right? This is, tasks me to log in. Oh, yeah, better log in. Yeah, this, I need to be logged in for this to work. So let me log in a moment. Yeah, no, but it's all, I'm attacking myself. Of course, it's not secure. What do I care about HT? Yeah. No, the crazy thing is that, this way I would have it automatically because appspot.com gives you certificates for anything you want. So, okay, so this would be the form, and this is my list of posts, okay? So this is one site. This is Luca-teaching. Now, the other site I built is luca-teaching-attacker.appspot.com, okay? How does this site work? Well, I did the following. I took my form here, and I made a kind of copy here. And I write on top, how much do you like bananas? Okay? The form action now is not hash, but it is the other side. So the form will be posted to the other side. Okay? Then I have, the title is, has a value that you need to eat more bananas. Okay? So this is the title of the post I want to cause to be added when you submit your preferences, okay? The content is, and for the very best bananas, go to www.bananas.com, which does not sell bananas, but is a fan site. And now everybody goes to that site. Okay, you can do it after class. Okay, but so I just took it at random. So there is title and content, but notice this, I say style display : none. This means when the style is display none, this means that the stuff should not be displayed. So these table rows are not, you don't actually see them on the screen, okay? What you see are two buttons that are labeled a lot and not so much about how much you like the bananas, right? And the arrow type submit. So when you press these buttons for preference about how much you like bananas, what you think you are doing is responding to a poll on how much you like bananas. But what you are actually doing is submitting a form to my other site in which you happen to be logged in, entering a blog post that says you need to eat more bananas with a certain content. Okay? So that's the attack. Let's see whether the attack works. I hope it does. I mean, it worked half an hour ago in my office. So this is a form. How much do you like bananas? Oh, but why does it say a lot twice? What did I miss?
I really like bananas, man.
Oh, no, okay. And a lot and not so much. I mean, come on, Okay. Do we like them a lot or not so much? I think I like them a lot. Okay. Okay. Now, this does something, okay? And I say, wait. Why am I in the other side? You may be confused yourself, no? But notice that even in the other side, the new post has now appeared, right? And of course, there is somebody who says the winter is coming, because these, some of you, was continuing to play with my site. So that's fine. You know, I mean, this is not an attack. You know, my blog was made to be a blog in which everybody can post. So this post is not the attack. The attack is the first one that was caused in my name by me actually pushing a button in an unrelated website. Okay, so this is a prototypical simple kind of cross-site scripting attack. Okay, which works because the web has this, you know, weird security model, if you will, in which when the browser sends a page, sends a request to a site, it includes in the request the cookies for that site. Okay, and that's in part, by the way, how the ad trackers work, right? If you build an ad tracker network, what do? You have a piece of JavaScript that says something like, hey, this dude is visiting shoes.com, right? And you send it to your, you know, myads.com, for instance, right? And every time you send this information to myads.com, it goes along with a cookie for myads.com. And so myads.com started to think, oh, the guy associating with these cookies is at myshoes.com, now he's on Amazon, now he's here, now he's there, you know, looks like a pretty interesting person to whom to show this kind of ad, right? And so, you know, I mean, this is a bit simplifying, but this is a gist of it, right? So now we are not in the ad business in this moment, but we are in the business of knowing how to do a form. So how do you solve this problem? How do I avoid leaving the door open to any possible form submission if I want you to fill in some material, right? And the answer is, I need to put something in the form that is not visible to that other people cannot easily guess. Okay, so in order to prepare this attack, I had to prepare a form. Okay, we have to make it so that in the original form, this was the form generated by the proper site, there is something dynamically generated, evidently, that the attacker cannot guess in advance. And the best way to do that, or the standard way to do that, is this. When I give you a form to fill in, I generate a random string. For example, happy tomatoes. Okay, that's a random string. Why not? I mean, you know, any string can be a random string, right? So, no, that's not random enough. What? Okay, sorry for the jokes. But so the paradoxes of randomness, right? So the random string is happy tomatoes. So I give you the form that contains somewhere hidden in it so that the user does not see it, because the user would be fairly surprised to see a happy tomatoes on the web page. But I give you a form that contains happy tomatoes. And I also write on my side, in your session, which is associated with you, that I gave you a form with happy tomatoes in it. When I get a form submission back, I check, does it contain the secret string I gave you? If yes, I accept the form. If not, I reject it. That's how it works, okay? So let's see it at work. To see it at work, I mean, it would be a little bit cumbersome for us to generate every time the secret string, okay? Because forms are used like parsley on a website. No, you sprinkle them a little bit of everywhere. And so we, instead of building the form ourselves, we actually avail ourselves of the Web2Py capabilities to build a form to our specifications, because Web2Py then will take care of these secret text that is shared, okay? These birds are really cute. So let's look at it in this way. I want to use, instead of add1, another thing that is called add2. You see, in add1, I was building the form myself. In add2, I say, hey, Web2Py, please generate a form using the factory that gives me a form with the two titles. One is a post title, and the other one is post content. The first is a string, and the second one is text. Okay. Once you have this form, the logic works in this way. So the form is generated the first time and is empty. No, I mean, it's waiting for you to put values in it. When you say if form process accepted, this does the following. Process the form tries to validate the form. If the form is empty, you know, it just decides, okay, the user has not filled it in. You know, if this is a GET request, the user has not filled in the post and I don't need to do anything. This part is not executed the first time the user gets the form. So the first time the user gets the form, I simply return the form to the view, which is then displayed in my problem is that I like music, so so it sort of detracts to my concentration. I don't study with headphones. You see, there is it's displayed in that way, right? Form is a variable, and it's a variable that has a complex value as an HTML expression. For the moment, take it as granted, and then I will explain you why, how you can, you know, give HTML expressions as value to variables. But assume that form is this beautiful form that comes with prepackaged, and in this way, I place it on the website. Okay. Now, continuing the processing, when the form is submitted, I first process it, and we will see later in more detail what this does, but it essentially validates that the values are correct, and it validates also the presence of the secret token. And if the form can be accepted after being processed, then I perform the insertion in the database just as before, and I redirect just as before. Okay, so the difference compared to the other simpler implementation is that here I don't build the form myself in HTML. I use a Web2Py helper. That's the essential difference. And the other difference is that instead of asking manually, oh, is my request a post? And if so, do these. Instead, I ask for the form to be processed, and then I check that it was correctly accepted. Okay. Now let's look at what this generates and see how it is different from my homemade form. Okay. So wait. Yeah. Okay. Let me stop looking at this a moment and look at the local site from now on. So this is add post method 2, so I can click here. Okay, this is the form as generated from Web2Py. You see, is actually identical, but is identical on the surface, not in the content. So let's look at how it is implemented, the post. So, well, you know, the form has a bit more stuff. There is form group, yada, yada. But the essential part that is added is this one. Let me magnify it a bit. There is this div inside the form that has an option that says display none and has an input that has a name of form key. Okay, as you know from the class that I taped, an input of type form key, an input of name form key is sent back to the server with a variable called underscore form key, right? So essentially, when people submit this form, this value will be available, and this value here, okay, this EC etc. This is a proper looking random string, not like what was it, Happy Bananas. So this is a proper looking random string that is also part of your session, so that when you submit the form, it will be validated against this. How to check that this is part of your session? Okay, let me just do this and then I answer the question. Okay, so checking that is a bit so I need to do a small modification to my code. No, actually, you see, here I'm doing something that really is not that great. That I probably should not be doing, because it's a security threat. I should not be logging this sensitive information, but I'm logging essentially information that is part of your session. And if you look at the bottom, I have a form key for login, and I have this list of form keys, right? And I also have a form key for notable create. Okay, so I have the form keys for all the various forms that I have outstanding. Okay, among which there is also this EC756869, which is this one. Okay, so the problem of managing form keys is a hairy problem because you know, you may be visiting my website, click on a form, and I generate a form key and give you one, and then you say, nah, well, I don't really want to submit this form, right? You move on to some other place. You again are given a form. Essentially, every time I give you a form to submit, I generate a new form key, and then I need to store it somewhere. Okay. And then at some point, I must decide with some expiration, and maybe, I don't know, 1 hour or maybe 24 hours, so that the old form keys I gave you, now I can forget them. Because otherwise I blow up my storage, right? If you visit a lot of forms. So there is this boring management of the form keys that is done, in this case, transparently for you from Web2Py. But the important principle I want to underline here is that the forms generated by Web2Py are protected against cross-site scripting attacks by these form keys that ensure essentially that only the person who actually, not the person, actually only the browser window who received the form from the server is actually able to submit it back to the server. Okay? Other sites cannot generate plausibly looking stuff that when you click on it cause a form to be successfully submitted. Okay, that's the idea. Okay, now let me take questions. Yeah, sorry, there was that one before.
So, if we couldn't someone else trying to make an attack just like open up the form and have the form key generated and not submit the form and then just like click inspect and get the form key at the value thing and then just put it
Yes. So you are certainly able to attack yourself, right? But the problem is that if you have my website and these, you know, I don't know how to call it, like Super Bananas website, the Super Bananas website is not able to click inspect on the other tab. Tabs cannot inspect each other. Browsers implement some isolation model so that the JavaScript running in a tab cannot access the content of another tab. Otherwise, all hell would break loose, right? So that cannot happen. And so you're essentially putting a secret in a tab that another tab cannot look at dynamically. And you're entirely right that if this isolation between separate tabs in a browser did not exist, you know, I mean, everything would break, right? Because then, you know, every site, if you were logged in 2 sites at the same time, they would be able to talk to each other. Yeah. So there are other questions? Okay, so now this is a perfectly good way of creating a form, and I actually use it a lot. I like very much this SQL form factory. It's described in detail in the chapter on forms and validation of the Web2Py book. The Web2Py book, you know, has the overview chapter that you really ought to read, and the other chapters that, you know, you ought to semi-read. You know, you skim them, you read some pieces that you need, and then you at least know roughly what's in there, so that when you actually need it, you can go read everything, okay? But it's a fairly well-written book. So, so the SQL form factory is essentially something that helps you produce forms as if you had a database table. You define the fields as if you had a database table with those fields. And then it produces forms for you. And I find it a very nice helper. I use it a lot when I want to custom build a form. Now, it turns out that there is an easier way to build a form if you truly have a database table. If you truly have a database table, you can just do this. You can simply say form is equal to SQL form of db.post, and this will generate a form for inserting an element in that table. There is another method for generating a form for editing that I think I will show you today, okay? But for generating a form for adding, you simply give the name of the table, and that generates the form. So, you know, if I click on add 3 here, if I click on add post method 3, now this generates this. Now, the rest of the code is identical, except that if the form is created in order to insert something, the processing of the form itself will cause the insertion. I don't need to do the insert by hand myself. Okay, you can look at the various options. These factory methods of SQL form take a lot of options to make your life easier. So I think it's worth at some point that you dive into the book and look at the various options. Okay, for example, there is a way to say something, I forgot exactly, but I think it's that do insert, or maybe insert is equal to false. If you actually want an insert form, but you don't want to insert anything because you want to do it yourself, you can do that. Actually, we could, let me show you where it is, just because so we know where the documentation is. Web2Py book forms. Okay, forms and validators. I will answer your question in a moment. Okay, but SQL form. And here gives you the documentation. Okay, form. This is what I'm doing for a table, and you can ask read only. Okay, if you want to display a record, you can specify the record ID, and you can say read only is equal to true. So you can play a lot with these things. It's really recommended that you sort of read how they work. Okay, you can use them to upload files. You can use them to do a lot of things. Now, there is a lot more in the book that I can cover. I think I want to cover quickly the principles. So we don't need to insert, and everything works the same. Now, let me try to build with you a form instead of visualizing a particular blog post. You think it's silly because I already have the list of blog posts, and I say no matter. It's a useful learning experience, as they say. Are there any questions? Yes?
So when you use Web2Py to automatically generate the form, you don't have to worry about like the hidden field or anything. It just does it for you.
Yeah, it does it for you, and it manages putting it in the session. Yes. Yeah, it's nice actually. Yeah. How do I override the CSS style for a form? Well, a form is just an HTML thingy, so you can just define your own style for it in your own myapp.css or whatever you want, right? Where is it? You see, this is the post. So if you want these to be styled differently, you can say, what is this? Oh, it's a text area of class text form control. Why does it appear in that way? Well, because, in stupid.css, it tells me that the text area has these attributes. So, you come up with your own better definition and you can redo it. I agree that this is not the prettiest, by the way, okay? But I leave a lot of the aesthetics to you for this class. There is enough for me to cover. Other questions? So let's now try to do an exercise that is kind of interesting. I mean, semi-trivial, but kind of interesting. So imagine that I want to do the following. That in our case is not very useful. Oh, actually, it may work. Does it work? Oh yeah. So how would you edit a post? I forgot that I had already the code in, so I don't need to write it on the fly. That's probably better. So if you want to edit a post, there are two problems. One is, I'm gonna generate another controller in order to perform the editing, and then I need to be able to tell that other controller, please edit a post, but which one, right? I need to be able to refer to a specific post. No, there are many of them, and I need to say which one. So if you look at the URL, this is a sort of URL without parameters. Is start, which is the app. Sorry, I woke up the monster. Default, which is the controller, and index, which is the method. Okay, so there are no particular parameters. But if I click on edit for this post, I go to something called start default edit /2. So after the function, which is edit, you can add any number of parameters that will be sent separated by slashes. Okay, that's one way to say, to pass information to the functions. I mean, in a normal programming language, you have arguments to a function, right? But here we are on the web. So we have a controller called edit, but how do I tell that controller what I want to edit? Answer, you put it in one of the parameters. So let's see how this is done. Let's see how the URL is created, and let's see how the information is fished out on the other end of what you want to edit, okay? So the URL is created here, okay? And so let's read this code actually. So this is an if-then that I decided to write directly inside the view that produces the HTML, okay? And this statement is saying, if auth user is not none, this means if the user is logged in, if the user viewing this is logged in, and if the email of the logged in user, auth user email, is equal to the post of author, this means that the post belongs to you, then I add this piece from here to there, okay? So this is essentially something that you always have to do on the web, is validation, right? I don't want you to be able to edit it in post, at least not in my blog. In my blog, I want you to be able to edit only the posts you authored, right? So I want to check that you're logged in and that the post is yours. If you're not logged in, then you cannot edit anything, I guess, okay? If these two conditions are true, I use a URL helper here to define, no, maybe that's too big, to define where to go. We have seen this URL helper in the video I made for you on Friday. And I told you that the purpose of the URL helper, and I mentioned this again because otherwise you will shoot yourself in the foot for the homework, is that it is able to create a reference to the current application. You know, if this application now is called Start, then you submit your homework and it will be called Homework 1 or Homework 2. The other person will not be able to use your application if you have code URLs to start. So this URL generator is important because it knows how to generate URLs inside the current application. Always use it. But the other thing it does is it enables you to pass a list of arguments to the method you are calling. Here we are calling the method that in default we are calling edit, and the argument is r.id. This is the record.id. When you create a database table, let's look at our database table a second. When you create a database table like this, implicitly, every row of the table has a special field called ID, which is unique and which is given by auto increment. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, you know, every time you insert a new row, it gets the next number. Okay, even if you delete all rows and insert one, it may still get, you know, it's a count up only thingy. I believe so, at least. I mean, it depends on the database implementation, but I believe so. Okay, when I want to talk about a post, I don't want to specify it by title or by you know, content. I mean, there could be many posts that have the same title, like, you know, cat for sale. No, I mean, Pukiti, whatever. Okay, but you get the idea. So when I want to refer to a post, I want to refer to the post ID because that uniquely defines, uniquely identifies the row of the database that needs editing, right? So here I'm generating a URL that goes to default index and whose first argument is the row ID. Okay, that's the URL. And in fact, the URL that is generated is this one, start default edit 2, because we want to edit the second row. Okay. Now on the receiving end, on the edit method, the edit method is this one. What do? We do the following. Let's come to this line later. But first I say, request args of 0. So a bit of discussion of what crazy thing I'm doing. The real thing would be to do this. Request.args is a list of arguments, right? Now I want the 0th argument, okay? Oh, but since the poor receiving end does not know what the argument is, this is a string, right? Because, you know, everything you passed in the URL, I mean, the URL is a string. If you chop it between 2 slashes, what do you get? You get a string. I mean, you have no idea that is a number. The first argument could be Luca, for all I know, right? So we would have to say integer of these. okay? And we would have to say something like post is equal to db post ID is equal to integer of that select. So this per se would generate an iterator of rows. I will go to the database in depth later, okay? But just to show you what is in the sausage and not only the final sausage made. So this would do a query for everything that has a particular ID. And if you say first, this would either give you the first element or none if the list is empty. So this big thing here would be quite tiresome to write each and every single time we need to fish out something out of the database by ID. So this is actually the truth. But Web2Py offers the following shorthand, which says db post in round parentheses. So this means if you fail to find it, just give me none, please. Okay, and request args with a round parenthesis 0, which says something. Well, you know, if the guy didn't specify any argument 0, you know, again, don't blow up, but just give me none in the end. So it's a sort of safe way of fishing out what you need to fish out. Now, post can be none. So if post is none, remember in the web, you always you have this funny duality. You're designing a website as a sort of consistent entity where things match together. But you also have the problem that you really have no clue whether the request is being sent to you by your code or by some, you know, somebody tinkering with your code to see whether we can get to do funny stuff, right? You don't have control. Just as the student was helpfully pointing out, you know, that you could take the code into a tab and cook it up and make it look different and then click on a form or do whatever, right? The same is true all over the place. So you must every time validate the request that you get. You cannot assume that it's valid just because it comes from your own web page. There could have been somebody tinkering with it, right? So here I say, if post is none, which shouldn't happen in real life, I mean normal life, then I send you back to the home page, okay? Now, if the post is not none, you know, and you may be saying, you know, Luca, but this is silly. You just checked in the view. Let's look at it. We just checked in this line that I'm the owner of the post. Why am I double checking here? I mean, we should be done already, no? And the answer is no, we are not done. Remember, because again, I cannot validate the request. You could have forged the URL, right? I mean, look at it. I mean, actually, let me look at it on the cloud, since somebody was helpful enough, right? So I'm not the person who did this JSNOW post, okay? But, in the cloud, I may not know the ID of the element, unfortunately. Yeah, because these IDs are not contiguous, that's a problem. You see, these are a Penguin IDs. I don't know why it says invalid, but it's probably some. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, let's not get into that. I may have. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, this works locally, and let me not debug the cloud version. So, but this is to say, you know, somebody could have forged the URL. Let me look at the local version then, and not at the remote one. So let me minimize this again. You know, just as you asked to edit the element number 2, I could ask to edit the element number 9, right? And you see, this redirected me back to index because of security, but anybody can forge a URL, so you cannot trust it. So I need to verify also again these. A lot of the code in a web server sometimes is just this permission and validation code. If you pass the 2 criteria, so if the post exists and if you are the author of the post, then I can proceed to edit. And I build another SQL form. If I had it like this, then it would be a form to add a new entry. But because I say record is equal to post, this is a form that enables me to do the editing. So when the form is processed, the editing is inserted into the database, and then I redirect you to the home page. Okay? So that's how it works. Let me do another thing just on the fly. Let me maybe check in the code for safety. Okay. So let me add a form that will display you the blog post in more glory. I don't know why, okay, but I want to do that. So so how to do that? Okay, in fact, let me do it in a couple of ways, just as an exercise to show you how I can do things. So if I go to index here, I want to add a couple of buttons, and I want to add a button that says href is equal to URL default view1 args is equal to r.id. Oops, sorry. So and class. No, actually, I don't need a comma there. Boo. Okay, let me not add these. I just want to be super quick. View 1. Okay, and let me add a view 2. Okay, so this will generate, if I go here, 2 new buttons, view 1 and view 2. Oh no. Okay. Right, except that, of course, you know, I need to change this as well. Oh, go away. Okay. Now let me implement these two methods quickly. So in here, yeah, we have interesting. So I don't need to be logged in, I guess, right? So I can say post is equal to db post request hours of 0. If post is none, okay, again I can redirect URL default index, okay, and otherwise I can say form is equal to SQL form, and I can say db post record is equal to post, read only is equal to true, return dict form is equal to form. That's all I need. And then I need something called view1. View1.html that simply contains this boilerplate. Actually, is identical. Okay, so this should work. Let's see whether it does. If I click on view1, yes. I mean, it's not presented in the best possible way, but it's presented in some way. Okay. If you wanted to present more or less information in these automatically generated posts, the key is this code that you had in the declaration of the tables. So this code here that says, for example, db post time readable, db post time writable is equal to false. This essentially says the time of a particular post should never be displayed in a form, neither in reading mode nor should in writing mode back to the database. Okay. Instead, the author should not be writable because we should use the default, but it should be readable so that I can see by whom the posts are. The post ID is never readable because it would be unsightful to show post number post ID 5, you know, on the user on the UI. No, it would not be very nice. Now that's a way to generate. You know, to use a form in order to help your life. But you can do the following. You can also do display the content from the database in a more manual way. So let me just generate view 2, just to show that there is no mystery and there is complete flexibility in whatever you want to do. So what I can do is that, I fish the post. I again check that it's not none, but then I just return the post. Okay, I just return the post itself. Actually, I don't need to do any check then. Okay, I just return the post to the UI, to the view, and then if I can produce the new view. One moment, let me. Okay, you just give it the right name. Yeah. So I don't know. Here I can do pretty much what I want. For example, I can do something like this. I can say div class is equal to title, and I can say the title of the post is okay, and then I can just say post.title, okay, because the various attributes of the table are just available as fields of an object. So and I can say the I don't know content, and the content of the post is post content. Okay, now this wouldn't be a very smart idea because I would get an error if the post is none. But I can easily say sorry, if a post is none, okay, and I can say I don't know, div class is equal to alert, okay, like the post does not exist, okay, and I can say else, okay, and then I can say pass to close the scope, and this works just fine. So you can lay out the information in any way you actually want. So let's see how that works. Internal error. Okay, fine. What did I do wrong? Name post is not defined. So let's see where the error is. Yeah, it's a stupid error, right? The post is equal to post, I should have written. So I was hoping it was an insightful error to teach you something, but no, it's just a silly error. Oh. Okay, so this is a more interesting error. Yes, you're absolutely right. Yes, thank you so much. Yeah. Okay, somebody that has more of a focused mind than I do. Okay, so now this works. By the way, let me take the occasion of his helpful comment to tell you, why did I call post title, post content, right? Why don't I just call them title and content? The real problem is this. When you develop, this information is stored in a database file that maybe I should show you where it is, okay? It's here. So if you are inside the directory where the application is, start, right? You can go to look at the databases subdirectory, and you will see that there is a lot of these special files, .table. Those .table files are essentially Web2Py's way to remember what is the state of the table, so that if you update the table declaration, Web2Py will know how to correspondingly update also the table in the actual database, okay? The actual database file is this one, is storage.sqlite. And the actual database is kept via SQLite. SQLite, did I already mention SQLite in this class or not? So SQLite is a very old database developed at UC Berkeley originally, I believe, written in C, that has the following characteristics. It's not really a concurrent database. When you need to modify the database, the person doing the write or the modification holds the write lock and locks the entire file. So there can be only one writer at a time. So it does not really support concurrent access. but it does two great things for you, or three great things for you. First of all, it's binary compatible across all formats. Okay, so all platforms. So you can be under a Unix, Windows, Mac, whatever. I don't know if you know these silly details, IBM, but when you store integers, you sometimes need to know the order in which the integer bytes are stored. Have you a little endian or big endian architecture, right? And so the bytes of an integer are written in a different order. SQLite will solve that problem for you. And so you have a binary compatible format for your data across all architectures. That's one of the great things. You know, everything of your executable code may be different, but I can take this SQLite file and ship it to somebody else, and they will be able to open it just fine on a different version of computer entirely. The other thing that SQLite does great, of course, is that it's an SQL database. So it gives you all the query capabilities and all the various operations of SQL, which you don't know very well right now, but which I will explain later in the class, at least in part. The third thing it does well, and I really want to underline it, is that it's blazingly fast. I don't know how many of you are interested in data science, for instance. And if you are in data science, you sometimes have to cope with these 3 gigabyte CSV files. I know, you know, I mean, very often it happens. Now, reading a 3 gigabyte CSV file is very computationally intensive for all the stupid reasons, right? How do you read a CSV file? Well, you have to read each line and then you have to parse it. Oh, there is a quote beginning here. Let me see if there is a quote that ends, you know, and if the quote ends, then the string is over, and then I have to look for the comma. Oh, there is written digit 1, digit 2, digit 3, and then a comma. Oh, then digit 1, 2, and 3 have to be converted in a binary integer, you know? It looks easy, but have you ever profiled a program that reads ASCII input in large amounts? You end up spending 90% of the time in these low-level parsing routines that parse strings, numbers, and quotes, and whatever else, right? So reading large CSV files is incredibly slow. I was able, in many cases in my code, to speed it up by factors of hundreds by just, you know, reading the CSV file once and for all and writing in an SQLite file, and then replacing SQLite whenever CSV was used in all my data science. Okay, so I just give it to you as an advice. Now, this is not a difference of a factor of 2; it can be 100. Okay, so now you know, and essentially it's because these. It's essentially all pre-parsed. It's a binary format. All the interpretation of the data is already done. Okay. There was somebody I know who was doing some analysis on the 4 gigabytes of Twitter data, and they had a CSV file 4 gigabyte long, and then they needed all the tweets by a certain person. Here you can just build a database and say select star where Twitter handle is equal to John, and boom, you have all the tweets, and you can loop over them in no time, right? So please remember it. Aside from this class, SQLite is a great thing, okay? And the fact that it's solved, I know that there is a funny feeling among the students. For example, sometimes I get as a course evaluation among the course evaluations, the class is still in Python 2.7. No, like the old bits that surely don't work anymore. They need a bit of dusting. But there is old stuff that really works. And this SQLite that was written a long time ago and well maintained is one of these jewels. I think that is used in every Android phone as the basic way to keep all the settings because it's so fast and so efficient. Okay, end of advertising mode. Now, the one drawback of SQLite is the following. It has a lot of reserved words. So when you will be creating your own homework or your own apps, you will be tempted to say something like title or author or any smart English word that you find short and descriptive, you end up with this super funny error that tells you, let me show it to you actually, let me try to generate, like, let me generate a new table, like db define table, because you will get into these, I don't know how to call it. No, like field, what would be a good name? Like user, no? I mean, everything has a user, I guess, right? So user seems to be a perfectly valid name. Field, and then what is like another thing like date, no? Everything has a user and a date. Well, okay, I think it's enough like this, okay? So when you access your website next, okay, you get this error. And then you go here and you say to look at the error, and it says invalid table column name user is all reserved SQL, no SQL keyword. And so, you know, the solution is to use, I don't know, I typically add a prefix to these things to make it, to do it away, you know. I've been known to use other languages than English, but I don't think it's a super friendly trick for people reading, you know. Especially for those of you, you know, I cannot read languages written in non-Latin alphabets. So I think you're officially able in Python to send me a homework entirely done, say, in Chinese. But, you know, please don't do that to me, because then I cannot read it anymore. Okay? Yeah. No, it's not a joke. I mean, you really can do that. And I've really seen that. I mean, of course, you know, I mean, the Chinese must be very happy. So, yeah. But, yeah, so that's one of the reasons. Now, what time is it? So we still have a tiny bit. Okay, let me do deletion. No, we have examples of how to edit and how to add. Let me see how to delete. What do I want to do? Well, first I want to add a button that says delete. So I want to go here, always in my index.
Would you commit the settings?
Oh yes, let me do that now, as long as it works, right? Who knows where the quote comes from? I'm not dead yet. Eh? Spam a lot. You have to refresh your musical culture. It's by the Monty Python. Yeah. I'm not dead yet, right? There is a dance. Yeah. Okay, actually, there is already a deletion method. Okay, I did too much for this. Sorry. It was pre-made, the code. So for deletion, you have various ways to do it. But what I want to try to solve is a problem. I want to create a button that essentially causes the entry in the database to be deleted immediately, right? So I want to create something that, when pushed, creates a URL that deletes the entry. So this, on the face of it, is simple, right? Because I could write, even though there is already written a method, let me try to write it and then tell you what the drawback would be. Actually, let me sort of show it to you briefly. This is a delete method that works. I fish the post. No, if the post is none, I send you away. If you are not the author, I send you away again. No, because I don't want to do it. And otherwise, deletion, I know you would expect that there is a pretty syntax in Web2Py for deletion, but there is none. In Web2Py, you cannot simply say delete this thing that has this ID, or maybe you can, but I forgot how, okay? So the way I do it is always I say dd, and then I put a query inside the brackets, and then I say .delete. And so what I'm saying is essentially, fish out all the posts that have a particular ID and delete them, which, you know, is a query that can be satisfied by only one post, but it deletes it, okay? Now, you know, again, the post will be specified by request arguments 0. So what is the problem of doing this? The problem of doing this is that, again, the URL can be forged, right? If I create a URL of the form, let me write it here. If I create a URL of the form start, default, delete 1, this will delete post 1 if it exists, right? And this will delete post 2, okay? And so, you know, people really want at some point to use this kind of way to delete to delete to perform deletion. In fact, there is a famous article. I think if you go look, Google search it, it's called something like "Google deleted my site." No, and it was done because once upon a time, somebody created a site where people could blog and add the information, and it was a site with a lot of content, right? But it was full of these links of this form for performing the deletion, right? And so what happens is that Google then, looks at the Google crawler, which was just built in those times, looks at these URLs that are of the form, oh, this is is this just a link? It's a link to something called the delete immediately that has a certain URL. I mean, you can look at it also this way, right? I can inspect this link, this element, okay? And the element is nothing else than an A element with a certain URL. So Google was clicking on that, right? I mean, while it was browsing, while it was crawling the site in order to index it, it was crawling over all the delete links, and it deleted really the site, right? I mean, it caused the site to be deleted methodically, right? And the authors of the site were not very happy. But in general, the problem is again one of cross-site forgery, right? Because now you could include one of these deletion links in another website, like how much you like bananas? A lot, not so much. No, and when you click, this would again perform a deletion on my site. So essentially, how do you protect? We have seen how to protect forms, but this is not a form. This is just a URL. How do you protect URLs so that you know that they can only be clicked by the page in which you actually put them in? They cannot be forged by anywhere else or crawled by browsers in any other way, right? But they are only part of the page that they actually generated for you. So the principle is always the same. You include in the URL what is called a user signature. That is a signature that is typical to that user. Let me tell you how it is generated, and let me tell you what it depends on. No, it's, let me go by I know I'm a bit slow, but let me go in detail. So you generate it in this way. It's our beloved URL helper, okay? I don't know why I chose to say variables is equal to ID is equal to r.id. Oh no, actually, let me look at this line. That I want to do. I want to do later. A moment. Okay, let me just comment on this. And I say user signature is equal to true. User signature is equal to true means the following: every user has a secret in the session. Okay, so I have a secret for you who are the logged in user. Okay. Now, when I need to produce a assigned URL, I look at the URL, and that is called, for example, /edit/1. Okay, I take /edit/1 and my secret, and out of the two, I compute a hash. Okay, and I append the hash to the URL. If you look at the URL that is produced when I click on edit, when I click on delete immediately, boom, now this will be gone, I guess. Yeah. But if you look at the URL that was followed, you see, it had this signature as one of the variables that was sent together with the URL. This is the hash signature. So on the receiving end, now I need to specify, hey, check that the URL has a proper signature. And I do it in Web2Py kindly by just executing this line. Auth requires a signature. Just like this requires the user to be logged in, this requires the signature of the URL to be valid. So this will not accept a get from any other place. It only accepts get requests that are properly signed by the user, so that are produced essentially where, they cannot be forged. They come from a page where the URL was properly included. So you cannot guess this signature for a URL you don't know. I mean, if you are a user, you cannot guess the signature for a URL. It's only the server that can produce it because it is based on a server-side secret. Okay? And so you can use these in order to authenticate a lot of things you want to do. Every time you want the user to be able to push on a button or do something, but you want to accept the replies only from the user, then you can sign the URL in this way. Okay. Now there are various catches. Let me try to let me just do something like this. I just want to give you a couple of examples of how this URL helper works, okay? So that you can see how, one second. At what is, yeah, I can. Actually, okay, let's play with the URL helper a bit. This goes to default example. This goes to default example. Let me do one per row so that it's a bit better. So there are, suppose you have to pass a value. The value is for, I don't know why, but you can say args is equal to, I don't know, for example, for and Luca, okay? Another way to pass values is that you can pass a variable list. So you can say vars is equal to a dictionary that says ID is equal to 7, 7, person is equal to Luca. Okay. Let's start to see how this works. Okay. So you see, if I pass arguments, they get just put with the slashes. If I put variables, then there is a question mark, and then the variables follow, properly encoded. For example, if this is Luca e Gianni, okay, then you see the space gets encoded in a plus. So essentially, Web2Py takes care of URL encoding the parameters. Not every, or even a better example, if I say Luca/Gianni, okay, the slash would not be a valid character in a variable because otherwise it would be interpreted as a path delimiter. And so, you know, Web2Py is kind enough to replace it by the proper escape sequence, okay? So these are two different ways of passing information. You have variables and arguments. It's a bit up to you to decide how to pass information around, okay? On the receiving end, you could be reading those values with, let me write it just here as an example. You can say, for example, request args of 1, and this gives you the first argument. Or you can say, for example, request vars person, okay? So you can access both variable and arguments. My personal choice is this. I always use arguments for elements that are compulsory. It's like in Python, you know, you have some parameters in functions that are positional because they must always be there, okay? So positional arguments that need to be there, I generally use arguments to transmit them. Optional arguments, I use variables because variables, you know, is a dictionary and you can check whether the variable has a value defined or not, but it doesn't, you know, change the structure of the slash sequence. Okay, so for example, if you are paginating through a long list, the page number is optional because when you first land there, you are on the first page, and so that I would use a variable. Okay. So now, sorry. I can, okay, args is equal to, I don't know, 5 and 6, And I can say user signature is equal to true. Okay, so what does this generate? Internal error. No, I think I know why, and it's a stupid reason. No, actually, I don't know. No, it is a stupid reason, right? I mean, one is never sure. All right, sorry. Okay, so this is what it generates. You see, now you see it explicitly, this variable containing the signature there. Now, there is one catch that always bites us. It will not bite us immediately, but it will bite us essentially once we move on to Ajax in the second part of the class. This signature signs the whole URL. So essentially, when you ask it to produce a signature, the Web2Py first computes the whole URL except for this particular signature. Okay? It feeds it to the hash function and then signs it all. So now at this point, you cannot sign anything. You cannot modify anything. You cannot add another variable like and page is equal to 3 and without breaking the signature. We will see that in Ajax is often necessary to make sure that we generate a signed URL that we can still modify a little bit. Okay? And so I just want to tell you now, because it will bite us later in the class, I just want to tell you now that if you like, there are ways of saying that only portions of the URL need to be signed. For example, you can specify that only the root URL needs to be signed, or only the root URL plus the parameters, but not the variables, needs to be signed. And this is something that we will often have to do. So I'm telling you now as a preview, because we are talking about signatures, okay? Signatures are really a powerful way of building a website, because in a sense, if I check that you are logged in and I give you a page with signed URLs, after that point, I know that you are the only possible person who clicks on those URLs while respecting the signature, okay? So, so it's a very powerful way of ensuring authentication. In a sense, signatures ensure what is your sort of normal default mental model of how a web page should work, right? In a web page, if you have no intruders or no nasty thing happening, you would be able to assume that the only people who actually reply to and follow your links are the people to whom you served your pages, right? And signatures actually make that true to a large extent. Okay. Okay. Let me conclude here and just take questions from now on. Oh, I plan to post homework 2 tomorrow at some point. I don't know exactly at what hour. In the afternoon. Yes. Sorry? Yeah, homework 2 will be basically on. So in this sample code, you have a lot about how to post, to create a post, edit it, etc., etc. And in homework 2, you will essentially do the same, but for the inventory of a website. You know, how many products you have, buy one more, get one less, etc., etc. So essentially manipulating database content via forms and this type of signed URLs. So, oh, the due date. No, what does it do? It will be 1 week. So next Wednesday. Yeah.